Welcome back. SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Paulie and Teddy, SBR picks. All the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. Thursday means college football. We'll preview the four biggest games as we see it and play the day before we get out of here. Friday's the NFL. Going to be a fun show with good information. And Loshak in the bag coming up next. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Let's start with the bad beats. Maction, Miami, Ohio, and Ohio over 59 falls 58. Miami of Ohio led 28-7. Only 2 points in the second half, Teddy. Very important. The safety was huge as they win 30-28. A lot of Ohio money, too.
Sure. And I mean, from a side perspective, the books did very well in this ballgame. From a total perspective, you had the over. Ow, that one kind of hurt. Kind of hurt a little bit, especially when you consider how bad the Bobcats defense has been this season. They haven't held a team without an offensive point in a half all year. Did it last night against Miami to cash under bets. Tough beat for overbetters.
All right, how about Champions League? Man U, Juventus under 2.5. 0-0, about the 66th minute. Ronaldo scores, does the Teddy cover celebration, pulls the shirt up to show the abs, and then Man U scores in the 86th and 89th minute. The latter coming on an own goal, and Moreno does the Hulk Hogan to the Juventus fans as well. Vicious beat, 2 late goals there, not supposed to happen, puts it over. And Lyon led 2-1 late. They gave up a goal in the 92nd minute. All this kind of stuff happened in the World Cup. It was nonstop why it was so good. So shenanigans yesterday in the Champions League. Bad for the books. Marshall over. You got to bet this team over. Dan D'Antoni, Mike's brother, took him to the tournament last year, won a game, terrific guard play, 164 up to 176. That was 105-77. OKC under 220 down to 216. They beat the Cavs 95-86.
Sure, OKC showing real signs of life after a very, very rough start of the season, even without Russell Westbrook in the lineup. The Thunder have been a team that have been steady risers in my power ratings over the course of the last week or two. Obviously, the under last night, a clear right side winner in a night where there were a lot of unders in the NBA, and most of them right side cashes. OKC at or near the top of that list.
How about that? 9 of the 10 games went under. The only game that went over was the Utah game. And then at one point, I think last week, you were up like 22 units just blindly betting overs, Teddy. So they had a little bit of correction last night.
Yeah, most assuredly. Unfortunately, it cost me a bet in the Pacers game. But the bottom line is you are going to see the markets make corrections. There's been a lot of pub about how the NBA overs have been cashing in. There's been a lot of talk about how the offenses are ahead of the defenses. That certainly wasn't the case last night. And the markets can and will adjust. And the pendulum will swing from all offense to maybe not so much. Certainly great night last night in the NBA for underbettors.
All right. Also bad for the books. Pistons 1.5 up to 3, won by 7. That game was crazy. They were up 8. They were down 13. They took the lead. They fell behind and then won. Spurs under 217.5 to 215.5. Bad bets. Raptors over 225 up to 232.5. Stayed under. They won again. 4-0 on the road trip. Kawhi was back. With it now 11-1 with some home games coming up. Knicks over 222 to 225 against the Hawks, fell short. Mavs under 218.5 to 213. Utah beat them 117 to 102. Although Luka played well for the Mavs in the loss.
And note, we're talking about NBA totals that lost last night. The big moves that lost. We weren't talking about this a month ago. So we're starting to see signs of the markets not being quite as on top of things as they were. They're still cranking out plays every day, but those total moves, which were money in the bank for about 3 weeks, maybe you hit the brakes on them a little bit if you've been following them every day.
All right, here we go. Ohio State on the road against Sparty. Buckeyes 3.5, 52. This is at 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox. If they want this game to matter, at least in terms of the Big Ten championship, they better win this game, because if they lose, Michigan's going to do it, and I know it's still one of the biggest rivalries in sports, but Michigan's going to go to the Big Ten title game if Ohio State can't win this one. 0-5 ATS run, Teddy. Blown out against Purdue. Lucky to beat Nebraska. Going through the motions. Can't like how they're playing. And Michigan State got the win on the road against Maryland last week. There was wind. Lewerke only had under 100 yards passing. They held Maryland rather to 100 yards of total offense in the 24-3 win.
Sure. I mean, when you talk about the gift that keeps on giving, there are plenty of them in college football. Certainly when it comes to Spartans football, you got a head coach 25-10 as a dog. D'Antonio's been real good in this role for a long, long time, catching points. Although Michigan State, boy, they hung tough. I think they pulled the outright upset 3 years ago. 2 years ago, 1 point game. Last year, 48-3 Buckeyes. They annihilated that squad. It was over before it started. Certainly the type of loss that the Michigan State kids will remember even a season later. You don't see Sparty take a whole lot of losses like that. And you're right about Ohio State as being a team that has been repeatedly failing to cover numbers. Their last point spread cover in Big Ten play came against Rutgers in September. It's been a long, long time. They have been a consistently overvalued commodity, even with a Heisman contender at quarterback.
Well, can I trust the Sparty offense here, which did nothing against Michigan? I know it was weather, but couldn't get much going. They moved the ball against Purdue with the backup. Although they didn't put up a ton of points, but Purdue doesn't have a great defense either. Ohio State's defense has been a mess, Teddy, with Bosa leaving. What happened against Purdue? Nebraska moved the ball on them as well. Interesting handicap, but I'm with you here as far as you can't ignore D'Antonio's record as a dog here with his ATS run.
Sure, and I mean, we talk about Brian Lewerke and that Michigan State offense. It's not a pretty offense to watch. They're not taking a lot of shots downfield. They legitimately lack playmakers, and it comes down to, 3 yards in a cloud of dust on a lot of plays for the Spartans offensively. That being said, Ohio State's defense isn't stopping anyone right now. They're giving up over 450 yards per game during this 0-5 ATS run. And of course, the Buckeyes, they feel vulnerable. They've looked vulnerable. But from my point spread perspective, this is a game where, you look back a couple of months ago in the look headlines, and the Buckeyes are well over a touchdown here. Now it's 3.5. I'm not laying with them, but boy, the price on Michigan State, let's just put it this way. The bargains betting against Ohio State have come and gone. Not the same level of value to go against the Buckeyes as we saw a month ago.
Yeah, that's a great point with those look-ahead lines because in the summer, Ohio State was 10 at home against Michigan. Now they're 3.5-point underdogs in that game. So that's great. We see some big moves like that. Even the Syracuse game. Tomorrow, Syracuse is a 3-touchdown favorite? They were underdogs against Louisville in the summer. Alabama at home to Miss State, 12:30 Pacific on CBS. I think they're impervious to letdowns. They're that good. The little Mississippi State money, though, they expect a letdown. 24 is the side and the spread, and 52 is the total. Alabama has covered the first half in every game. And I know there was a run there. I think Ralph Michaels had it, Teddy. I think it was 19-1 or 20-1. If you bet on Bama in the first half and bet against them in the second half, although I think that ship sailed a couple weeks ago, but you just blindly bet them ATS, you're cashing nonstop. 51 points per game, allowing 14 points per game on defense. They are outgaining their opposition by 268 yards per game. They are averaging 8.22 yards per play. Tua has 27 touchdowns and 1 interception. And you make the good point here, though. Fitzgerald's going to turn it over. Look at what Miss State has done on the road in some of these games. Alabama can coast and maybe still bury them in this one.
Sure, but you say Alabama's too good to have letdowns. The point spread results don't show that. Alabama, after LSU, 2-5 against the spread the last 7 tries. Now, the Crimson Tide are coming off back-to-back point spread covers. We saw that early in the season. They covered their first 3 of the year, then lost their next 3. Now they've covered the last 3. The betting markets aren't giving you bargains to back the Alabama Crimson Tide. There is an enormous groundswell of support for that team. And this line is certainly not in conjunction with recent series history that's shown Mississippi State giving some Alabama, I'm not going to say some real battles down to the wire, but they haven't been blown out repeatedly by the Crimson Tide, unlike some of the teams that they've so far this season. But you're 100% right, Paulie, when it comes to that Bulldogs offense. It's hard to trust Nick Fitzgerald and company when they score 7 points against Kentucky or 6 points against Florida or 3 points against LSU. That is not an offense that is working well against the better SEC defenses that they face.
Yeah. Alabama, yes, they've had letdowns. This particular team, I don't think it's possible. They're that good, and they can go through the motions and still bury a Miss State on an 0-8 run ATS on the road against a higher-ranked team. Game day is there. Clemson and Boston College. Look at this. Clemson's being priced like Alabama. Last 4 games have outscored their opponents 240 to 36. They opened 17. They're up to 20 against a ranked team on the road in prime time, and it's supposed to be under 50 degrees. 57.5 the total. Dillon back for Boston College. I don't think they're a top 20 team, but in any event, they're on a 9-0-1 ATS run in ACC games. Clemson on a 1-6 ATS run on the road in November. The rushing game's fantastic. Good quarterback in Lawrence. If there's one team that could give Alabama a game, it would be Clemson, but they got to win this one first.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this, and I'm just going to ask you this. Who's better, Clemson or Wake Forest?
Clemson.
Who's better? Sorry, Boston College or Wake Forest? Oops.
Okay, Boston College. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. By how much would you say Boston College is better than Wake Forest? A touchdown? More?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yet, we saw Clemson laying exactly this spread, -20 on the road at Wake. My powering numbers is BC 2 touchdowns better than Wake Forest. And Clemson's laying 20 here. That is the level of betting market support we're seeing for the Tigers right now. They are just killing teams. As you mentioned, 63-3, 41-7, 59-10, 77-16, their last 4 games. And you say, all right, well, they played Wake. Wake stinks. They played Florida State. Florida State's imploding. They played Louisville. Louisville's bottom feeder. The one standout game there was NC State. And that was obviously perhaps, even though Clemson didn't win by the biggest margin in that game, that was the most impressive of those victories because of how thoroughly they throttled that team. So a Tiger squad that was -20 against Wake is now -20 at BC. That is legitimate betting market for respect. Very good about Trevor Lawrence. You know, Travis Etienne's been the monster. What's he? 998 rushing yards, 8.6 yards per carry, and 15 touchdowns on the ground, Paulie. Can the BC defense have any chance of slowing that attack down?
I don't like their defense. I had NC State earlier in the year, and Dillon didn't play, and NC State dominated for 3.5 quarters. And I guess if you bet it late, you got the money. There was a blocked punt. NC State missed a chippy field goal. Finley threw a couple picks, but I'm not sold on this BC defense. And I think it's a lot of points, though, Teddy, a lot of respect. And this will be the play of the day coming up. But this, it's a game changer, though, with Lawrence. The kid can actually throw, and a big upgrade over Brian, in my opinion. But just like last week, they're going to have so many games where the running game is so good, and they have all those NFL players on defense, they can just run it, get out of there, and move on to the next game.
Sure. And this game, to me, really comes down to one simple handicap. A.J. Dillon, I always say, running backs aren't worth anything. They're not worth anything. A.J. Dillon's worth something. All right, A.J. Dillon's a legit, big-time NFL back. And if Boston College opens up the game and they're running Dillon, and he's just not, they're getting blown off the line of scrimmage, and they're not getting any they're not getting any ability to push Clemson off the DL, they're going to get killed because the passing game is not going to work. But if Dillon can grind out some first downs and shorten the game, Clemson's run defense, number 4 in the nation. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that teams have been playing from behind against the Tigers and have abandoned the run completely. BC blasted by Clemson, 34-7 last year, 56-10 in 2016. Ooh. So we're talking about an offense that has not worked, a running game that has not worked against the Tigers in years past. Yet somehow this year feels a little bit different, Paulie. Dillon, he's a special back, and that BC offensive line, as experienced and as talented as you'll find outside of a top 5 program in college football this year.
There's a banana peel there every once in a while. They lost to Syracuse laying 23 last year. They got beat at home by Pitt laying more than 3 touchdowns. So it's happened where Clemson's been a big favorite and gone down. Last game, I'm surprised at this line. 2:30 Pacific, Pac-12 Network. Oregon is on the road against Utah. Utah's 4. They're taking money. I grabbed 3.5. I thought that line was nuts, but it's 4.5 and 56. Huntley, the quarterback's out for the year, the broken collarbone for Utah. Shelley takes over. Huntley got hurt in the second half of the Arizona State game. They couldn't do a damn thing after he left. Now, they weren't ready to play. They were down. I don't know if they won anyways. They're going to win. They were down 14-0 right off the bat. The defense couldn't stop Arizona State, but they came back to take the lead, and then Huntley got hurt. Shelley was 4 of 11, 59 yards, had an interception. Oregon, Herbert back off the win against UCLA. 7 straight unders for Oregon on the road when they're the underdog. What do you make of this point spread and Utah support here? Tough at home. Woody Ham, a great coach. Utah also still they're going to go to the Pac-12 title game if they win out. They have all the tiebreakers.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Pac-12 South, which Utah is in, I mean, there's no elite teams in that side of the conference, and it's clearly showing with even off the blowout loss last week. Utah, if they win out, will be there in the Pac-12 title game, which speaks volumes about their side of the conference. But you're talking about why is this line as high as it is, and how has the money come on Utah? I'll tell you how, Paulie. There is zero, and I mean zero market respect among the wise guys for Oregon right now. Why? Yardage stats. You know, they love the yardage stats. The Ducks have been out-yarded in each of their last 4 games. Washington State, you say, okay. You know, Zona, you say, UCLA? You're like, no, the Ducks can't be getting out-yarded by UCLA. So even though they've been winning some games on the scoreboard, the stats have told a different story. The defense has not been very good of late, and the offense has cooled off despite Justin Herbert's extraordinary talent level and, big stats so far this season. You also look at what Oregon's done on the highway.
Yep.
They had the win at Cal, all turnovers, and that was a McIntyre game where the Cal quarterback turned the ball over by himself without, I think, 5 times. But their last 2 road tilts for Oregon, blowout loss. So, yeah, Utah lost their quarterback, but there's love for Jason. I'm not saying love for Jason Shelley. There's respect for Jason Shelley in the markets, even though last week, coming off the bench, he wasn't lighting up the scoreboard. He's a dual threat. He can make plays with his legs, and when you have a backup coming in and you have a coach like Whittingham, that's potentially a big bonus for the Utah Utes as they take on this Duck squad that, while still good, hasn't lived up to that, all right, they're great already type of level that we kind of thought they might be earlier in the season.
Yeah, I don't know what, good point. I don't know what happened against Arizona. That was ugly. And certainly the road issues are there as they were blown out, dominating the first half at Wazoo. But I got to be concerned about the Utah defense. What happened? It was supposed to be a solid defense, good defense, and Arizona State carved them up in that game in the desert. And Oregon 0-7 ATS after a win by 21 points or more. That's what happened as they beat UCLA and got the money last week. Money time, play of the day. Not the best schedule, but always fun games to talk about. Highlighted by Game Day, making the trip. The ranked opponents, Clemson and BC. Take it away, Teddy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is one look. If we lose with it, so be it. But 20 points is too much. All right. Betting number 122. Take Boston College plus the 20. Again, Clemson's laying this same price to Wake. I think A.J. Dillon can find some room to run. Look for the Eagles. I'm not going to say they're going to hang tough for 4 quarters, but I'll say they'll hang within the number. And if you want to have a little bit of fun, just a sprinkle a money line right there on BC. As you mentioned, Paulie, we have seen Clemson lose on the highway late in the season before, last year at the Carrier Dome. BC plus the points, betting number 122. That's our play of the day.
All right, very good. Loshek in the bag coming up next. We'll run through the NFL tomorrow. We got a lot of news before we even get to the games. Injury news, Darnold out, Des Bryant to the Saints, if that means anything. And we get to recap the good Thursday night game with the Steelers at home against the Panthers. We'll talk to you then. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends I'm at Real Sports, but on Twitter, he's at Teddy_covers, SBRpicks.com. We'll talk to you tomorrow.